When we saw what happened with, how many times has habeas corpus been suspended in our country?
Once that I know of.
4 times.
For certain. I'm not certain if those were.
The instance that you were referring to was one where the courts subsequently showed that Congress is the one that has the ability. Do you know what section of the Constitution the suspension clause of habeas corpus is in?
I do not. Nope.
Do you know which article it is in?
No, I do not, sir.
Okay, well, it is in Article 1. Do you know which branch of government Article 1 outlines the tasks and the responsibilities for?
Yes.
Which one?
Congress.
Yes. Stephen Miller has said that he is actively considering that there is active consideration of habeas corpus. Have you had a conversation with Stephen Miller about suspending habeas corpus?
This exchange between Senator Andy Kim and Secretary Kristi Noem is one of those moments that sounds procedural on the surface, but quietly exposes something far more serious, a fundamental confusion about where executive power ends and constitutional authority begins.
Senator Kim.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam
Hi, Senator.
Secretary, a press release came out from the Department of Homeland Security a couple days ago. It said that members of Congress in New Jersey that went to the Delaney Hall ICE detention facility could, quote, could have just scheduled a tour. I guess I'd just like to hear from you if you can confirm that you understand that members of Congress by law are allowed to show up unannounced to conduct oversight visits of ICE detention facilities.
Yes, they can conduct oversight, but Senator, what I would ask is that they understand that that doesn't mean they could show up with a mob with the intention to break in and assault law enforcement officers. That's what happened at Delaney Hall last week.
You're familiar
is that those individuals and those members of Congress were surrounded by criminals, creating criminal and perpetuating criminal acts.
You understand that
but when
they
you
were
show up
already
and ask
within
for a tour,
the
we
facility.
facilitated every single tour that every member of Congress has wanted. We've always done that, and we have to, when we have a tour, also make sure that we've addressed security concerns and have enough staff and all of that, and we were accommodating that when those individuals showed up and they decided instead to break in.
You know that they were already on the ICE premise, already facilitating into having the tour when there was the arrest of the mayor. They were not breaking into
They had broken through the outer fence, and they were interior on federal property when the crimes occurred.
They were invited in by ICE as the ICE was preparing to give them a tour.
That doesn't give them an excuse to start punching law enforcement officers.
But you understand that they were not storming the fence.
Well, I don't understand. Are you making excuses for their behavior that day?
I'm just trying to clarify what exactly
Oversight is an important part of what Congress does and what you provide to our department, and we welcome it. We give tours when members of Congress ask for it. We just ask that they not be politicized, that they actually are there to provide the oversight that is needed to ensure that we're doing due diligence in our job.
And if I were to show up at ICE detention facility unannounced, I would be let in.
Yes, I would ask that you would be allowing us to secure the officers that we need to give you an appropriate tour, that we'd be able to cover the other bases and posts that they would have to leave to come and facilitate that. We may have to call other people in to help cover some of that because of the extra responsibilities, but we can do that.
I've done this before. I just wanted to make sure I heard that from you. I wanted to just go back to something that was raised earlier about habeas corpus. Can you confirm to us that you understand that any suspension of habeas corpus requires an act of Congress?
President Lincoln executed habeas corpus in the past with retroactive action by Congress. I believe that any president that was able to do that in the past, it should be afforded to our current day president. This president has never said he's going to do this. He's never communicated to me or his administration that they're going to consider suspending habeas corpus, but I do think the Constitution allows them the right to consider it.
When we saw what happened with, how many times has habeas corpus been suspended in our country?
Once that I know of.
4 times.
For certain. I'm not certain if those were.
The instance that you were referring to was one where the courts subsequently showed that Congress is the one that has the ability. Do you know what section of the Constitution the suspension clause of habeas corpus is in?
I do not. Nope.
Do you know which article it is in?
No, I do not, sir.
Okay, well, it is in Article 1. Do you know which branch of government Article 1 outlines the tasks and the responsibilities for?
Yes.
Which one?
Congress.
Yes. Stephen Miller has said that he is actively considering that there is active consideration of habeas corpus. Have you had a conversation with Stephen Miller about suspending habeas corpus?
I have not.
When it comes to FEMA, this is something I'm concerned about. Being from New Jersey, we've had challenges with Superstorm Sandy and others in the past. I was alarmed when I saw some reports that the acting head, Richardson, said last Thursday that he's about 80 to 85% done with the hurricane season plan, given that we are just days away from hurricane season beginning. I just wanted to ask you, is he done with his hurricane preparedness plan?
He is working diligently with the employees at FEMA and are prepared for hurricane season. What you
Have
referenced.
you seen this plan? Have you seen this plan? Is he?
Yes, I've been
presented it to
actively
you?
engaged in hurricane response and preparation.
seen the
We're
plan?
pre-staging people, pre-staging equipment.
Is that
We're
plan
making sure that
something-
we have tabletop exercise we're running through with all of our regions on what their response will be. It's been very extensive how we've laid out this plan.
And will you be able to share
what-
that plan with this committee?
I will check and make sure
Yeah,
that
if
I
you can
can,
check
but
on
I would think that we would be able to do
Okay.
that. I can't
Just
see any
one-
reason that would
Just
be.
one last thing. A couple weeks ago, you said that you were considering restarting in-person training at the National Fire Academy.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask if you're prepared to tell this committee that that you are moving forward with restarting in-person trainings.
Yes, the plan is to do that again, so.
That has been approved
yeah.
to restart?
Yes, it has been.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I yield back.
Senator Scott.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman.
Kim opens not with ideology, but with process. He cites a DHS press release suggesting that New Jersey members of Congress should have scheduled a tour before visiting the Delaney Hall ICE detention facility. That framing is critical because it subtly misrepresents the law. Members of Congress do not need permission to conduct oversight. They are explicitly authorized to show up unannounced. Oversight is not a courtesy extended by the executive branch. It is a constitutional responsibility designed precisely for moments when transparency might otherwise be denied. Noem immediately reframes the visit as chaos. She describes a mob, criminal behavior, and assaults on law enforcement. This rhetorical move matters because it attempts to delegitimize oversight by associating it with disorder. But Kim does not accept that narrative. He calmly clarifies that the members were already on federal property, that ICE was in the process of facilitating their visit, and that this was not a storming or a break-in. In other words, the oversight was lawful before it became politically inconvenient. What Kim is doing here is drawing a bright line between oversight and optics. Even if tensions arise, that does not erase Congress's authority. Oversight does not disappear because it becomes uncomfortable. And eventually, Noem concedes the key point. Yes, if a senator showed up unannounced, they would be allowed in, subject to security logistics. That admission quietly undercuts the department's own public messaging, but the exchange becomes far more consequential when Kim pivots to habeas corpus. This is not an academic exercise. Habeas corpus is the legal safeguard that prevents the government from detaining people indefinitely without justification. It is one of the oldest protections against arbitrary imprisonment in democratic systems. Kim asks a straightforward question. Does suspending habeas corpus require an act of Congress? Noem's response is alarming. She references Abraham Lincoln and suggests that because habeas corpus has been suspended before, modern presidents should be afforded similar latitude. That language is revealing. Constitutional powers are not inherited privileges passed down through strong presidents. They are limited authorities defined by the text of the Constitution. Kim then methodically dismantles the argument. He asks where the suspension clause appears. Noem does not know. He asks which article of the Constitution it is in. Again, she does not know. When he explains that it appears in Article 1, the article that defines congressional power, the implication becomes unavoidable. The authority to suspend habeas corpus resides with Congress, not the president. This is not a minor gap in knowledge. It is the architecture of American democracy. Kim compounds the concern by referencing Stephen Miller's public statements about actively considering suspension of habeas corpus. He asks whether Noem has discussed this with him. She says no, but by this point, the issue is larger than any one conversation. The Secretary of Homeland Security has suggested executive discretion over a power that the Constitution explicitly places in the legislative branch. That should give pause to anyone who values civil liberties. The latter portion of the exchange, on FEMA hurricane preparedness and the National Fire Academy, serves as a contrast. When discussing disaster response and firefighter training, Noem is confident, specific, and prepared. The implication is subtle but powerful. Competence appears when the subject is administrative, not when it concerns constitutional limits on power. This hearing is not about theatrics. It is about whether the guardrails that separate branches of government are still understood and respected. Oversight, habeas corpus, and emergency authority are not partisan concepts. They are structural protections meant to prevent the concentration of unchecked power. Andy Kim does not raise his voice. He does not accuse. He asks precise, historically grounded questions, and in doing so, he exposes something more troubling than disagreement: uncertainty at the highest levels about where constitutional authority actually lies. If accountability, constitutional limits, and the rule of law matter to you, stay engaged. Share this analysis. Follow for deeper breakdowns of congressional oversight and executive power, and remain part of the effort to ensure that constitutional safeguards are not treated as optional when they become inconvenient.